It was ironic that I got to do this job when I'm absolutely terrified of heights.
The impact this sort of project can have is it raises our profile. It certainly raises our profile within the wider WSP global business. And it also has the opportunity of raising our profile here in the Middle East marketplace. We want to attract the best people to come and work for us, and therefore we have to be working on some of the best projects, and this is a great example of one of those. So when we get these opportunities on these quite different projects, we have to look at the opportunity and make sure we make a decision as to whether to proceed on a balance of the reputational impact it will have, both positive and negative, but also on the commercial impact as well. Some of the more complex projects, some of the more iconic projects are more difficult for us to do, and we have to be aware of those. We have a number of themes that are running through the business at the moment. We consider what the impacts on sustainability will be. We also need to consider the impact on health and safety, and the safety of our people, and also the safety of the people who are using the thing that we have designed and built. So my initial reaction to the base jump platform was, no, don't do it. But I think that was more about actually jumping off the tallest building in the world rather than WSP undertaking the work.
When the request first came in, initial excitement of quite an extremely interesting and unusual job, but mixed with a high amount of trepidation about how we were actually going to do this safely and handle the risks involved.
Initial reaction when we talked about the project and it came into the office was that it was crazy. It was probably one of those projects in the UAE and Dubai that, you know, get talked about for a few meetings and then kind of disappears. It was only really when the first project meeting happened with the client and Turner, the project manager, and it suddenly dawned on me that it was a real job and they really wanted to do this.
I remember the email. It was highlighted in bold, and it said top secret project, confidential, highly confidential, and it said base jump at the top of Burj Khalifa, and I was stunned. I thought it was a joke. I didn't believe it.
The day the request came in, WSP have been working with EMAR on the Burj Khalifa, on some of the other projects up at the top restaurant, which is not at the top, it's at 124th floor. We began to realise that at 124 is not that high after this project. And we were working on that job, and the request came in from EMAR. Would we be interested in putting a small platform somewhere else in the tower? I said, yeah, it sounds fine. How big's the platform? 3.5 metres, no problem. It seems very simple. Whereabouts exactly in the tower? They said, oh, at the top. I said, at the top in the restaurant? They said, no, at the top. We said, well, at the top? They said, at the top. And it was at the top of the pinnacle. That brought a whole new context into the project. So when we got the news and we took it back to the office and explained it to the team was extremely excited. And in fact, one of the things we did in order to bring the team in and get them involved, and really to get the whole knowledge and skill base of the team into the project, we ran a competition. And we split the team up into little groups and held a competition to come up with the best concept for the platform. Of course, the main criteria here was not the design of the platform, which is relatively easy, but it's how to build that platform in the location where it had to be built, right at the top of the tallest building in the world, 128 metres off the ground, and in a pinnacle which is only 1.2 metres wide. So the logistics were critical.
In terms of the design solution and how we went about it, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a relatively small steel cantilever. You know, it's the sort of thing that on a normal project we would design, you know, in a day or two. And from that aspect, it's relatively simple. But obviously, the challenge is the location of the cantilever. So immediately, the real challenge is, firstly, how are you going to build it? How do you physically get materials up to the top of the Burj Khalifa? And then how do you physically erect those members or whatever system you come up with? You know, how do you manhandle materials when there's literally, you know, the construction site, if you like, is a 1.2 metre diameter tube, obviously with nothing around it to take any support from. So that was a real challenge, and so it was much less to do with the normal structural design of a steel cantilever. It was all about how to physically build it, and more importantly, how to do it safely.
So we took it back to the office, we ran the competition, and there was huge excitement. In fact, we gave the team 3 hours to come up with their best concept, and we collected the concepts in. We were still getting people phoning us up at midnight that same night. They'd gone home and carried on thinking about this and were designing and coming up with ideas how we could lift it into position easier, how we could connect it easier. It just went on, and even the next day people were still coming and saying, how about this, how about that. From my point of view, as Director of Structures, of course I felt that excitement and that adrenaline rush, but at the same time I was thinking of the risks and how are we going to mitigate the risks here. Hugely, a lot of risks putting anything into such a complex position to get to. Tallest place in the world. In fact, we were actually building above the pinnacle of the tallest building in the world. So for 2 weeks, our design was the tallest building in the world. Getting up there and down again safely was quite a logistical feat. Having completed the competition, we had some great ideas for the concept. We now had to look at how do we get this thing into position. Remembering that we're working at the top of the tallest building in the world, we're 828 metres off the ground, we're working on a construction site which is literally 1.2 metres diameter, which you could probably get 1 or maybe 2 people in at most. Our initial idea, we thought we'll do a helicopter lift, fabricate the thing at ground level, lift it into position by helicopter. Commonly done in construction, especially in remote areas for pylons and other structures which need to go into remote or difficult areas to get into. So we asked Emma, the client, do you have any contacts with helicopter lift companies? And they thought about it and said, we'll use the Army. A few phone calls later, we had the Royal Air Arm in the office and we were discussing with one of their helicopter pilots what's the best way to do it. Wasn't as easy as we thought. The helicopter lifts that we'd normally see, the helicopter can lift, the pilot is sitting in his cockpit looking at the ground, he's judging, he's holding the helicopter steady and by visualising the ground just below him. In our case, the ground is a long way below us, an awful long way below us. So there's no frame of reference for him to look at, no reference point. There is GPS technology available which will hold the helicopter steady, but even then he can't see down underneath the belly of the helicopter to see the item he's lifting. Solution to that is you have a second pilot looking out and giving commands to the first pilot, and perhaps one guy in the pinnacle with a radio calling the shots as well. But it's becoming more risky, it's becoming more remote. Second problem, the downdraft from the helicopter, of course, can create a lot of turbulence, and if we've got this platform hanging underneath, it could start spinning. We don't really know how that would spin. Obviously, we'd have ropes off it that the guys at the pinnacle catch and bring into position. But if it did start a spin and we only had 2 guys standing at the top of this very tall building and they're trying to catch a rope, we saw inherent risk there. And even worse, if one of those ropes got caught round some of the aircraft lights or something on top of the pinnacle and it got stuck, we could be in a real fix. So having had this long meeting with the Royal Air Arm, we decided that whilst it could be done, this is probably not the best solution. And we went to a second option, which was to build the platform in small handleable pieces, maximum weight of about 30 kilograms, 30 to 40 kilograms, and we would lift each piece up to the pinnacle individually and bolt it together at the top, using using 2 people in the pinnacle itself and roped access personnel to assist.
A decision was made quite soon that the helicopter was too dangerous from a health and safety point of view, and that sort of changed the tack of the design. So all the initial concepts were rethought along the lines of taking the platform up piece by piece and then building it manually rather than prefabricating it and just delivering it to the top. And And that was the point where it all became about health and safety. You know, how do you safely get the pieces to the top in terms of what's the heaviest piece the guys can lift, you know, the pulley systems that they need to use, down to how each piece fits together and where the steel erector is going to be positioned when he's making those connections, and how the bolts are going to be configured so that he can reach them from where he's going to be. So the level of detail that we went into in terms of physically connecting everything together was really unprecedented compared to a normal project. And a lot of that work was done in Eversendi's offices, the fabricators, in 3D using their Tekla software. So we had basically intensive workshops working with their modelers, and we were going through every single connection and sort of picturing, okay, this is where I'm going to be sat, I can reach half a metre in front, the bolt's got to, the nut's going to be on the back, the bolt's got to come in from this side, is it going to clash with the member that we've already installed? So you know, we literally tried to think through the installation within that 3D model, and we also got the rope access guys from Megami, so they were heavily involved in those workshops. So it was a real team effort between us as the structural designers, Megami, who were the guys who were physically going to have to go and build it, Eversendi, the fabricators, and a key part of that whole process was our health and safety director, David Larter. He's a guy with, you know, 20 years experience in the steel industry, and more recently with a real strong emphasis on health and safety in design. And it was his input during that process that I think was the big success story of the project, because once the platform was built, the feedback from the Megami guys was that everything fitted, the tolerances were good, and physically it was possible to build. I mean, if you see the pictures that they took during the installation, I think that's an equally, you know, impressive feat as to base jump off the platform. I think building the thing was just as impressive as leaping off it with a parachute. You know? This is definitely the most spectacular site visit I've ever had. We did, I've actually been up there twice. So the first time I had to go up and verify some site dimensions within the spire, because the new platform connected to existing, there was 3 brackets on the inside of the spire that we connected to. So yeah, the first trip up there was, frankly speaking, was quite daunting. I'm not that good with heights, and I had a few sleepless nights before once I realised that I had to go on the site visit. But once I actually started climbing, I was actually quite calm, because you're climbing inside the spire, which is basically just a steel tube with a cat ladder, and you're obviously attached to the safety lines all the time. So it was quite odd, because I got to the top just before you come out of the top of the spire, and the 2 guys that were escorting me up were kind of 60 metres down. So I actually climbed through the hatch into the spire and was kind of stood there for 5 or 10 minutes as they climbed up to catch up with me. So that was quite an interesting trip. And then the second time was to inspect the final platform. So that was pretty cool, going up and actually sitting on the platform that we designed in position at the top of the spire. That was very, very satisfying. Design and installation point of view, this job wouldn't have been possible without great structural design, great input from our health and safety team, the proactive sort of attitude of Evisendi, the fabricators, and finally the input that Nagami, the installers, actually had, the rope access guys who physically built the platform. As a team, I thought we worked very well together, and that's what made it such a successful project for WSP.
I think my reaction post the jump was very positive. It was great to see it on YouTube. It was great to be associated with, I think, what is the highest man-made structure in the world in terms of the platform, sitting on top of the highest man-made structure in the world, so that's good. I'm very pleased that WSP were involved, and we have been speaking to people about it, and it's something that everybody in the region is aware of, and therefore from a reputation point of view, I think the positive side is far larger than the 3-metre length of the project itself.
My reaction, well, I actually went to watch the jumps, so my reaction post-jump was amazement. It was the most spectacular thing that I've ever seen, because we were lying, sort of, all the skydive Dubai guys were sort of lying on the back, looking up, and then you could see you could hear the countdown on the radios, and you could see the smoke going off, 2 guys, and then they jumped, came around the Burj, and basically flew on top of us. It was just fantastic, and word got round that I was the guy that had actually designed the platform. So some of the cameramen who'd been up there were coming to sort of congratulate me on the platform. So I really felt part of the whole event, So that, I was just delighted. It was a great thing to be involved in, and of course a bit of relief that there wasn't any problems. You think through as much as you can, and you as engineers, you go through all the worst case scenarios and design those things out. But yeah, there was a lot of relief that everything went smoothly.
The Middle East, in terms of our business and what we do, so technical advice in the natural and built environment, is a very exciting place to be. This is where projects are of an enormous scale. The projects are often iconic. This is a region where the people are looking to highlight themselves by doing things which are a bit different, and that means that from an engineering and technical consultancy point of view, the projects we work on are very different, and that's very exciting.
When I came the first time in Dubai 3 years ago and I saw the tower, I was like, wow, this is the dream, it's the highest building in the world. We don't like to scare ourselves, it's not the goal. People think that you base jump because you're crazy, you like to get scared, but we like to fly, when we like to have fun, so if you are scared, if you scare yourself, there is no fun. Those jumps that will make happen, it's like the achievement of all those years of training and competing and friendship. It's all about making the dream come true here.